to City on a Hill Kids Church Online.
I'm Mola.
And I'm Jimmy.
Today we're going to be looking at Daniel in the second kingdom that King Nebuchadnezzar dreamt about.
That is the Medo-Persian kingdom, represented by the chest and arms of silver. But that will be after a time of worship.
The king signs a law that no one can ignore, unless you want to hear the lions roar. Daniel was a great wise man. The king chose him as his helping hand. 3 times a day he always prayed. With faith in God he was never afraid. The kings of the helpers didn't like what they saw, and tricked the king to make a bad law. But praying to God had to stop, or in the lion's den you would drop. The king signs a law that no one can ignore, unless you want to hear the lions roar. Despite his fear of the lion's bite, Daniel chose God, which he knew was right. Give thanks and pray, 'cause help and guidance he sought. And one day poor old Daniel was called. The king was sad but had to follow his men, so he sent Daniel straight to the lion's den. Well, Daniel believed that the Lord would save him, but to the king and his men Daniel's future was dim. The king signs a law that no one can ignore, unless you want to hear the lions roar. The lion's roar was incredibly loud. He was very big, he was very proud. His teeth were sharp and his claws were long, but Daniel didn't fear, for his faith was strong. So into the lion's den poor Daniel was thrown. But while he was there, he was not alone. God sent an angel to shut the lion's jaw. Daniel gave thanks like never before. The king signs a law that no one can ignore, unless you want to hear the lions roar. That no one can ignore, unless you want to hear the lions roar.
An angel came down to shut the lion's jaw. This big and scary lion couldn't even roar. Yes, an angel came down to shut the lion's jaw. He couldn't even roar.
Today we are talking about Daniel in the time when the Medo-Persians ruled. If you remember King Nebuchadnezzar's dream, this is the chest and arms of silver. By now, Darius was in charge, and he decided to divide the entire kingdom into 120 provinces, and over each province an official was put in charge. And these 120 officials had to report to 3 important men. These men were set to look after all the king's interests. And Daniel was one of these 3 men. Daniel was more capable than all the officials put together at every level. And Darius saw this. So he made plans to make Daniel to be in overall charge of the entire empire. The other officials didn't like this at all. They were jealous and decided to look for a way to get Daniel into trouble. They looked and looked and looked and looked for a way, but they couldn't find anything to get him into trouble, because Daniel was good at everything he did. He was honest and he was responsible. So they decided to try and get him into trouble with things concerning God, his God. So they came together and plotted to get Darius to sign a law. In those days, in the times of the Medo-Persians, once a law was signed, it could never be changed. It must never be changed, even by the king who signed it. So these officials went to Darius and said that he should make a law that would last for 30 days. In this law, it should be said that no one in the entire kingdom would be allowed to pray to anybody, whether a god or human, except to Darius. And that if this law was broken, that they would be thrown into the lion's den. Darius signed the law. And these officials must have been very happy, because they knew that Daniel will always pray. He will always pray to his God and to no other person. Back to Daniel. Daniel heard that Darius had signed this law. He went home. He went up to his prayer room, opened the windows that faced towards Jerusalem, knelt down and prayed to his God, as he always did 3 times a day. The officials went to Daniel's house and they caught him praying. Happily, they went to Darius to tell on Daniel. They reminded Darius of the law that he had signed and the punishment for breaking the law. Do you remember the law? Do you remember the punishment? When Darius heard what the officials had to tell him about Daniel praying to his God, he was so sad. He was so unhappy because he really liked Daniel. He was troubled. He tried to look for a way to save Daniel. He tried all day. But by evening, these jealous, happy officials went to Darius and told him that he should give the command for Daniel to be thrown into the lion's den. Darius gave the command, but he said to Daniel, "May the God that you serve so faithfully rescue you." A stone was put over the opening, over the mouth of the den, once Daniel had been put in. It was then sealed by the king's seal and the seals of the officials. And that was so that nobody would come and open up the den to save Daniel. The king then went back to his palace. He fasted. The usual entertainment he would have, he didn't have. He was so troubled. He couldn't sleep all night. And then very early the next morning, he went to the lion's den and called out to Daniel, anxiously wanting to know if God had saved him. Of course he had. The king was so happy. He got them to quickly take the stone off the opening of the den and asked them to pull Daniel out. And he saw that he was not hurt by the lions. And this was because Daniel had trusted God. The king wanted to know what happened, and Daniel said that God had sent an angel to shut the mouths of the lions. The king then gave the order to have those jealous, plotting officials arrested, and them and their families now thrown into the lion's den instead. The king then praised Daniel's God, and he even wrote laws that everyone in the entire empire had to obey. And these laws were that every person was to respect and fear the God of Daniel. And he said the reason why and how great he is. Daniel continued to do well in the kingdom. And that's the end of the story.
Hey guys! What an amazing account. I think it must be one of the most famous stories in the whole world. And so, of course, today we have to make lions, didn't we? Look, I've made 3. I've made a big one, I've made a baby one, and I've made one somewhere in between. And you can see the sizes of paper I need for each one. You're going to need a square of paper, and you can make these any size depending what you want your lion to be like. So, it's good if it's a lionish colour of paper. I've got this pale yellow. And once you've cut out your square, the next thing you're going to do is you're just going to fold your square of paper in half, like this. And then you're going to fold down 1/3. And the way you can tell it's a third is the top and the bottom piece there that are left should be about the same size. It doesn't need to be super precise, but try to get it so you've got 1/3. Then unfold them, and these are going to be our guidelines. And what we're going to do is we're going to draw our lion head in this top box that you've got there. Now, for this, I'm going to do it on this big one because this is going to be easier for you to see. So I've got my fold in half. Here's where I folded across the third. Now, the first thing to do to draw the lion head is you want to draw a rectangle, but you want the rectangle to be on a slant. And do this in pencil because you're going to be rubbing out some of these lines. So this is the sort of shape of your lion head. And now if I move to pen, you'll see how we can turn this into a head. So we'll draw a nose here. At the front, we're going to come down in a curve down to where the mouth would be. So this would be the mouth in here. Then under the neck, we'll come up, and then we're just going to swoop down to that corner there, okay, where our folds all meet together. Then at the top, we'll come down, and then we'll go kind of up for the brow, and then we'll draw a bit of mane there, and we'll draw in the eye. There we go. And then we can just add in a few details. Put these little dots that cats seem to have there. Put in a few whiskers. We can colour in our mouth, and we'll put in the edge of the mane there. Okay, so once you've got your lion head drawn, you're going to cut that out. So we're cutting around our lion. And then what we're going to do is we're going to cut right down this middle line here where we folded the paper in half in the very first place. Okay, so you'll have something that looks like this. Now, the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to fold up this long edge like a fan. Let's clear some of these pieces away. So, starting at the long edge, we're going to fold over and then turn it over the other way up and fold again and then fold it back and fold in again, and we'll do it all the way until we've got a complete fan. Now this is a bit easier on the smaller lions. It's a little bit more unwieldy on this big one. There we go. So there we have our lion. And what we're going to do is we're going to fold this side up, and that's going to make the fan that makes our mane for our lion. But before we do that, now we've folded it, we'll just straighten this out again, and we're going to draw in zigzag lines along the top, so that the kind of zigzag of the mane continues there. And then we're going to do the same thing at the bottom, because when we fold the mane in half, which is what we're going to do, this will end up at the top. Okay, so you've got these, and then what you can do, just to make it look really good, is just cut out those bits of mane. Okay, I won't do it all the way along, but if you look on this one, you can see all of those edges are cut. Once you've cut those all out, all the way along the top and all the way along the bottom, we'll just get our fan folded back up again. We're going to fold this bit round, and we're just going to put some glue along these edges so that we can stick those two sections of our fan together. This glue is running out. Time to treat myself to a new glue, I think. Well, I'm not sure if that's going to stick at all. Let's see. Oh, there we go. Get a little bit more out. Now I've got too much. Oh dear. Never mind. It'll just stick really well. So we'll stick those two together. And here we have our lion. And you can make a whole group of lions. And it doesn't matter how many lions there were, because God shut their mouths and Daniel was saved. What a brilliant story, and I hope you enjoy making these little origami lions so you can act it out, or just to have fun and to remind you of the way God saved Daniel. Great! Well, that's the end of our Daniel series, but I will see you back next week when we'll be thinking about Mother's Day. Okay, bye for now!
Why do people get jealous? If you're not able to do something as well as your neighbour, why should you get jealous? Why should you be jealous of the person that can do something better than you can? It doesn't make sense.
It doesn't make sense. But just like how we saw in the story here, Daniel was honest and responsible and was just good at everything.
Yes, and Darius was going to reward him for being this way.
What does make sense though is jealousy and bitterness making you do mean things. Those officials were so jealous and bitter that the only way that they saw to get to Daniel was to attack him through his God.
That was a big mistake. That's another bunch of people trying to fight God. They can never win. God came through for Daniel and he saved him.
Because Daniel trusted God and God saved him from the lions, the whole kingdom knew about it and had to honour and fear God. That's it for this week.
Till next time.
Bye!